So the question that you want to know is, how can you improve your dating life fast? Cool, give me a breakdown. What's the situation?
So right now, I go out and I do things, but I've seen a lot of friends who just kind of go out and they're just there and they try different things, but it's not linear, it's not organized. So like what I do is I actually go out, I try a specific skill or a thing that I'm working on. For example, like eye contact is the only thing I'm going to try to do tonight. And if I do that well, that's going to make me happy. All right, and then after I go home, I'll kind of think about it, I'll write some notes about it, and I'll write about how well it went, and then I'll write about what I think I want to work on the next time, right? In the most linear fashion I can. And I've seen a lot of improvement with that because it's a step-by-step thing, and I don't move on to something more complex until I've mastered something more basic. But I wanted to get your opinion on what you feel about that like learning progression model, and if there's anything you would add to that or critique.
I love the fact that you've got a learning progression model. That is exactly how I teach. Every single person that I teach dating, I'm always getting them to just focus on one skill at a time. Because once you master the skill, then you can go on to the next skill, and then you'll end up getting the results eventually. The people that fail are always trying to get the outcome before the skill set. If you develop the skill set, the outcome will always follow. But you're right, some of what you're practicing is a little bit off. Eye contact is a key element that people often say they're working on. And good eye contact is not maintaining eye contact. Because maintaining eye contact is actually conflict. If you imagine if you're going to fight with somebody, you'll lock eye contact and hold it. Most women find that offensive and aggressive, and also many guys find it offensive and aggressive when women do it to them. So it's not something that you want to have. The best eye contact is one that's a balance of eye contact and looking away at the surroundings. This shows that you're situationally aware, that you're observational, but also you're maintaining conversation. You especially want to maintain eye contact at high points, when you're laughing, when you're joking, when there's good connection, and be willing to look away as well. That makes sure the interaction flows naturally. So again, eye contact is one of those things that I wouldn't necessarily go out to practice. It's something I'd be mindful of. The best thing you can practice when you first meet somebody is actually the art of observing others. So I get people to people watch before they talk to anybody. And people watching teaches you to slow down the way that you're going about things and to be a little bit more mindful of the people that you're talking to. In general, if someone's having a bad day, if someone's stressed, if someone's upset, if someone's got a wedding ring, if somebody's hanging out waiting for their boyfriend, these are all people that you probably don't want to approach. On the other hand, if you've got somebody that's looking around, looking to talk to you, smiling at you, showing you warm signs of invitation that they want you to talk to them, then it's probably worth it. In the 80s, there was a psychologist by the name of Moore that did a study of shopping malls around America. And they analyzed men and women to see the success rate of males approaching females during that environment and seeing what was the prime factor. The biggest factor was if a woman did not give a sign that she wanted a male to approach her, the success rate of the male was how much? Zero. A guy has a 0% success rate if the woman shows zero signs that she wants to be approached. So the very first thing I get people to do is to sit down and observe and learn to spot the women that actually want to be approached. Now, there were a number of signs that were identified. So there's 51 signs that a woman might give, physical signs to show that she wants someone to approach her. And these, we teach all these categories in one of our key programs. However, to give you one of the first ones, I like something called the 3 glances. And the 3 glances are one of my favorite methods to teach somebody how to observe someone that's willing to be approached. Glance 1 is somebody who is doing an activity, but stops the activity and looks around. That does not mean that person wants you to talk to them, but it usually means they're looking for a form of distraction. Not always, but often it does. And so if you approach somebody that is looking around when they're doing another activity, you often have some success rate, but that's not the person that I would typically go and approach. There is a second type of glance known as a type 2 glance, and a type 2 glance is someone that looks around and locks eye contact with you. There is a much higher success rate of talking to somebody that gives you a type 2 glance. But again, for the average student, I wouldn't recommend that you approach in that situation because that could also be a sign of fear. Someone's looking around, they see you, and then they look away quickly. The best one is what we call a type 3 glance. And if you only approach and talk to people that give you a type 3 glance, you'll typically find that your interactions are significantly better, especially if you approach in a way that doesn't weird somebody out. The type 3 glance is similar to the type 2. They're doing an activity or not doing an activity. They're looking around, they lock eye contact, and then they smile. The smile and locked eye contact is a universal sign that somebody's usually willing for somebody to come and approach them. The key is, when you first start that interaction, you want to do it in a way that makes them feel comfortable, doesn't weird them out, and gives them a permission to let you go away. Now, the way that I go about doing this when I'm teaching it is I get somebody to go out and observe and count how many glances they get of each type. So for the first week, I'll have someone go out, look at type 1 glances, look at type 2 glances, look at type 3 glances, and jot them down on your phone. And what you'll find is over the week, the type 3 glances increase because they become better at observing them. And this is a sign of all the people that you walk by every day that would probably be willing to have some kind of interaction. And so then what I do is for week 2, I'll get them to just nod at the people that give the type 3 and smile back. And so you've got week 2 where somebody's giving you a type 3 glance and you're going to nod and smile. And now what we're looking for is what we just got. I nodded and smiled, and then you nodded and smiled. This is called mirror neurons. It's where human beings tend to mimic other behaviors from other human beings. And one of the first signs that human beings are relating is mirror neurons are being triggered between you. That's why if you yawn, people tend to yawn, or why if you nod and smile, someone nods and smiles, right? So that's the key. And we start doing it as children, like babies do it, right? And it's a simple way of us, knowing what emotions we've got and whether we've got a connection with somebody. So if somebody looks at me and smiles, and I smile back, and then I nod, and they nod, it's usually a really good sign that it's okay to approach. So from the positive nod, that's when I'll know that it's okay to go and approach. So now, after week 2 of my student doing that, we'll go into week 3. And in week 3, this point, the student's going to start approaching. And we'll give them certain things that it's okay to say, things that make someone feel comfortable. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. One of the best is often a compliment, a really big free compliment. Nothing like, oh, hey, damn, girl, you look good. That's terrible. Instead, it's so much better to give someone a genuine compliment about something that you like. So for example, I might say, oh my gosh, I love your watch, by the way. That's it. There's no indication that I'm going to force this to go any further, and I might even go to walk away after saying that. Now, if the other person has smiled at you, locked eye contact with you, nodded at you when you nod, you walk up to them and say, hey, I just got to say, I saw your watch from over there, I admire it, it's a great watch. And then I can move to start walking away. If the person starts to engage me in conversation, then I know that they want to talk to me. And if not, then I know that I can walk away. By now, we've got 3 weeks in, and I'm very confident looking at people, reading what's going on, approaching people that are very warm to me, and I'm probably seeing them start to respond and trigger that conversation by saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for saying that, I appreciate it. And then I can follow up with, you have a great smile as well. I saw it from over there. Hi, nice to meet you. And I'll go for my handshake, which starts that physical intimacy and also gets the name exchange. Now, this sounds very normal and very basic, and the truth is you don't have to do it over 3 weeks. You can do it much faster than that. I recommend that people move at a rate that they feel comfortable. Once we get to that step where now I'm engaging in conversation, then I'll start focusing on the length of time in the conversation and how much I know about them and how much they know about me. So I'll make the conversation based more around, do we have things in common? How much common ground do we have? And one of my favorite analogies is, if you imagine getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a complete stranger, the chance of you having a conversation with them, the average person is what, would you say?
50%.
Like 50%. But what if you had that conversation and you found out that they were born in the same town that you were, went to the same school that you did, you just never recognized them before? Now, what's the success rate of you having a full, long-blown conversation with that person?
Pretty high.
Right, because what triggers conversation between humans is actually common ground. The more common ground we have, the more likely we are to talk. That doesn't mean it will turn into a relationship, but it does mean it will turn into a conversation. And a good conversation, if handled well, and the other person's in a position to date you and you're in a position to date them, is going to turn into something a little bit more intimate, whatever that may end up being. So my focus after getting the start of the conversation is how much common ground can I get with somebody. After that, good conversation where you have common ground triggers a chemical in your brain known as oxytocin. Oxytocin is also known as the bonding chemical or the love chemical. So if my good conversation is going well, the next thing I want to do is increase the amount of oxytocin that we're both enjoying in this interaction. And what's better than good conversation?
Great conversation.
Great conversation. That's good. That leads to laughter. So what we're looking for is laughter. So at that point, if I can have a connection with somebody and we've found good common ground, I'm going to start trying to make them laugh. I'm going to find everything I can to get the other person to laugh and for them to want to laugh with me so that we're giggling and joking and everyone on the plane going by us is going to be seeing this interaction and they're going to assume that we've known each other for
A long time.
For a long time, exactly. And that's how I know that I've got to that next step. So now my next week or my next focus on training is just making people laugh and having great conversations. After I'm having people laugh and great conversations, I'm then focused on will they be willing to go somewhere with me? And that's where we're talking about how can we get a confirmation that someone's willing to go somewhere else. So maybe it's, hey, you know what, when we first land, I'm thinking about grabbing a coffee. Would you like to grab one with me? And so I'm going to do an open invitation to see if they'll take that leap. If they will take that leap, then I know that this is somebody who's willing to walk with me and go somewhere. And then at that interaction, I'll focus on that. So you can imagine an entire week of meeting people, making them laugh, bearing in mind that I've got good at doing this now. I can always meet people, always find conversations, always find things in common, always make them laugh. And now I've got a very high success rate of people that are laughing, wanting to come with me and have a coffee. And of course, there'll be some people that can't or don't want to, but the ones that do, I know that I'm going to have a great conversation with. After that, they've come somewhere with me, and then I'll invite them to some form of date in the future. And I have an entire method about the way that I go about dating as well. I do dates that are low pressure, don't weird people out, don't leave them in an environment where it's unsafe for them, where there are plenty of people around, so that they can feel safe and secure and really get to know me. And then after that, we take things to a more intimate level. But that's this focus that I would be having. Because what we're really doing is we're trying to focus on releasing the oxytocin bond between two people that comes from good conversation and laughter. That's why stand-up comedians do so well when it comes to their dating life. It's because they're good at making people laugh. So if you were going to map it out, what I would do is I wouldn't do it based on time. I would do it based on until I feel very confident with that skill. So the first skill is observing, the second skill, and so on and so forth. And as you master each of these, you know that you're moving in the right way to having a great interaction. And in fact, many of my students that follow this path, they usually find that within 8 weeks to 3 months, they have completely mastered it. In fact, I mentioned this earlier, but we have a program, the ACE Formula program. The entire ACE Formula program is done over 6 months. And the whole purpose of it is to go through these systems and practice each one and master it and move on to the next one until you're in a position where your dating life just pretty much runs itself and it becomes very natural and normal to do. Cool. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.